Hello and welcome to my channel, Reading Radical Feminism. Please like and subscribe. We are currently reading Ecology by Mary Daly. Today I will be reading the preface. Preface. This book voyages beyond God the Father. It is not that I basically disagree with the ideas expressed there. I am still its author, and thus the situation is not comparable to that of the Church and the Second Sex, whose 1968 author I regard as a reformist four-sister, and whose work I respectfully refute in the new feminist post-Christian introduction to the 1975 edition. Going beyond God the Father involves two things. First, there is the fact that being continues. Being at home on the road means continuing to journey. This book continues to spin on in other directions/dimensions. It focuses beyond Christianity in other ways. Second, there is some old semantic baggage to be discarded so that journeyers will be unencumbered by malfunctioning look at that, equipment. There are some words which appeared to be adequate in the early 70s, which feminists later discovered to be false words. 3 such words in Beyond God the Father, which I cannot use again, are God, androgyny, and homosexuality. There is no way to remove male/masculine imagery from God. Thus, when writing/speaking anthropomorphically of ultimate reality, of the divine spark of being, I now choose to write/speak gynomorphically. I do so because God represents the necrophilia of patriarchy, whereas Goddess affirms the life-loving being of women and nature. The second semantic abomination, androgyny, is a confusing term which I sometimes used in attempting to describe integrity of being. The word is misbegotten, conveying something like, quote, John Travolta and Farrah Fawcett Majors scotch taped together, end quote, as I have reiterated in public recantations. The third treacherous term, homosexuality, reductionistically, quote, includes, that is, excludes, gynocentric being/lesbianism. Simply rejecting these terms and replacing them with others is not what this book is about, however. The temptation/trap of mere labeling stops us from spinning. Thus, goddess images are truthful and encouraging, but reified/objectified images of, quote, the goddess, end quote, can be mere substitutions for, quote, God, failing to convey that being is a verb and that she is many verbs. Again, using a term such as woman-identified rather than androgynous is an immeasurable qualitative leap. But spinning voyagers cannot rest with one word, for it too can assume a kind of paralysis if it is not accompanied by sister words/verbs. The words gynocentric being and lesbian imply separation. This is what this book is about, but not in a simple way. In Beyond God the Father, I wrote, quote, for those who are threatened, the presence of women to each other is experienced as an absence. Such women are no longer empty receptacles to be used as, another quote, the other end, inner quote, and are no longer internalizing the projections that cut off the flow of being. Men who need such projection screens increase the power of absence of such, inner quote, objects, and are thrown into the situation of perceiving nothingness. In this way, then, women's confrontation with the experience of nothingness invites men to confront it also, end quote. The primary intent of women who choose to be present to each other, however, is not an invitation to men. It is an invitation to ourselves, the spinsters, lesbians, hags, harpies, crones, furies, who are the voyagers of Gyne/Ecology, know that we choose to accept this invitation for ourselves. This, our self-acceptance, is in no way contingent upon male approval, nor is it stopped by realistic fears of brutal acts of revenge. As Marilyn Fry has written, quote, male parasitism means that males must have access to women. It is the patriarchal imperative. But feminist no-saying is more than a substantial removal, parentheses, redirection, comma, reallocation, end parentheses, of goods and services, because access is one of the faces of power. Female denial of male access to females substantially cuts off a flow of benefits, but it has also the form and full portent of assumptions of power, end quote. The no-saying to which Fry refers is a consequence of female yes-saying to ourselves. Since women have a variety of strengths, and since we have all been damaged in a variety of ways, our yes-saying assumes different forms and is in different degrees. In some cases, it is clear and intense. In other instances, it is sporadic, diffused, fragmented. Since female-identified yes-saying is complex participation in being, since it is a journey, a process, there is no simple and adequate way to divide the female world into two camps, those who say yes to women and those who do not. The journey of this book, therefore, is, to borrow an expression from the journal Sinister Wisdom, quote, for the lesbian imagination in all women, end quote. It is for the hag/crone/spinster in every living woman. Okay, and then she has a Simone de Beauvoir quote from the Ethics of Ambiguity. She says, Beauvoir says, quote, if all it, meaning life, does is maintain itself, then living is only not dying, end quote. So that's that footnote. It is for each individual journeyer to decide/expand the scope of this imagination within her. It is she and she alone who can determine how far and in what way she will/can travel. She and she alone can discover the mystery of her own history and find how it is interwoven with the lives of other women. Yes, saying by the female self and her sisters involves intense work, playful cerebration, like cerebral? All right, moving on. The Amazon Voyager can be anti-academic. Only at her greatest peril can she be anti-intellectual. Thus, this book/voyage can rightly be called anti-academic because it celebrates cerebral spinning. If this book/voyage could be placed neatly in a, quote, field, it would not be this book. I have considered naming its, quote, field untheology or unphilosophy. Certainly, in the House of Mirrors, which is the universe/university of reversals, it can be called unethical. Since Gyne/Ecology is the unfield/our field/outfield of journeyers, rather than a game in an, quote, infield, the pedantic can be expected to perceive it as, quote, unscholarly. Since it confronts old mold/models of question asking by being itself an other way of thinking/speaking, it will be invisible to those who fetishize old questions, who drone that it does not, quote, deal with, end quote, their questions. Since Gyne/Ecology spins around, past and through the established fields, opening the coffers/coffins in which, quote, knowledge has been stored, restored, recovered, its meaning will be hidden from the gravekeepers of tradition. since it seeks out the threads of connectedness within artificially separated/segmented reality, striving, quote, to put the severed parts together, end quote. Specious specialists will decry its, quote, negativity and, quote, failure to present the whole picture, end quote. Since it spins among fields, leaping over the walls that separate the halls in which academics have incarcerated the, quote, bodies of knowledge, end quote, it will be accused of, quote, lumping things together, end quote. In fact, Ecology does not belong to any of their departments. It departs from their departments. It is the department/departure of spinning. Since the custodians of academic cemeteries are unable to see or hear spinning, they will attempt either to box it out or to box it in some pre-existing field, such as basket weaving. Cemetery librarians will file and catalog it under gynecology or female disorders. None of this matters much, however, for it is of the nature of the departure of spinning that it gets around. Moreover, it is of the nature of women's movement that we are on the move. Eventually, we find each other's messages that have been deposited in the way stations scattered in the wilderness. The cerebral spinner can criticize patriarchal myths and scholarship because she knows it well. Her criticism has nothing to do with, quote, jumping over, end quote, tough discipline of mind. The amazing Amazon has no patience with downward mobility of the mind and imagination. She demands great effort of herself and of her sisters. We have another footnote. Warning, this book contains big words, even bigger than Beyond God the Father, for it is written for big, strong women out of respect for strength. Moreover, I've made some of them up. Yeah. Therefore, it may be a stumbling block both to those who choose downward mobility of the mind and therefore hate big words, and to those who choose upward mobility and therefore hate new/old words. That is, old words that become new when they're ancient, parentheses, quote, obsolete, and gynocentric meanings are unearthed. However, it would be a useful pathfinder for the multiply mobile, the movers, the weavers, the spinners, end footnote. For she must not only know the works of the masters, she must go further. She must see through them and make them transparent to other voyagers as well. Geez, lots of footnotes. Since the number of feminist journals can hardly begin to be adequate as outlets for the flood of creativity, feminists, lesbian feminists in particular, are devising alternative methods of distributing and sharing our works. One such enterprise is Matrices, a lesbian/feminist research newsletter. And you can get those in the 70s, and I don't know about anymore in 2022. Okay. To borrow an expression from Virginia Woolf, she must take, quote, a vow of derision, and then another quote. So begin, quote, by derision, a bad word, but once again, the English language is much in need of new words, is meant that you must refuse all methods of advertising merit and hold that ridicule, obscurity, and censure are preferable for psychological reasons to fame and praise, and all the quotes. And that is from 3 Guineas. Who and where are, quote, the derriere, end quote. The reader/journeyer of this book will note that it is not addressed only to those who now call themselves members of the, quote, women's community, end quote. Many women who so name themselves are journeyers, but it is also possible that some are not. It seems to me that the change in nomenclature, which gradually took place in the early 70s, by which the women's movement was transformed into the women's community, was a symptom of settling for too little, of settling down, of being too comfortable. I must ask first just who are, quote, the women. Second, what about movement? This entire book is asking the question of movement, of spinning. It is an invitation to the wild witch in all women who long to spin. This book is a declaration that it is time to stop putting answers before the questions. It is a declaration/manifesto that in our chronology, chronology, it is time to get moving again. It is a call of the wild to the wild, calling hags/spinsters to spin/be beyond the parochial bondings/bindings of any comfortable, quote, community. It is a call to women who have never named themselves wild before, and a challenge to those who have been in struggle for a long time and who have retreated for a while. As survivors know, the media-created lie that the women's movement, quote, died, has hidden the fact from many of our sisters that spinners/spinsters have been spinning works of genesis and demise in our concealed workshops. Feminists have been creating a rich culture, creating new forms of writing, singing, celebrating, cerebrating, like cerebral, searching. We have been developing new strategies and tactics for organizing, for economic, physical, and psychological survival. To do this, we have had to go deep inside ourselves. We have noted with grief that meanwhile, another phenomenon has appeared in the foreground of male-controlled society. Pseudo-feminism has been actively promoted by the patriarchs. Ain't that the truth? The real rebels/renegades have been driven away from positions of patriarchally defined power, replaced by reformist and roboticized tokens. This book can be heard as a requiem for that, quote, women's movement, end quote, which is male-designed, male-orchestrated, male-legitimated, male-assimilated. We have a footnote, Veronica Jang, Requiem for the Women's Movement from Harper's in 1976. Jang's article is deceptive because full of partial truths based on, quote, inside knowledge. It served the patriarchs of publishing well, being a sophisticated pronouncement by a woman that the, quote, women's movement, end quote, is dead. When and if they choose to resurrect this, quote, movement, journeyers will be aware that such rebirths have no more reality than such deaths. Back to the text. It is also a call to those who have been unwittingly tokenized to tear off their mind bindings and join in the journey. It is hopefully an alarm clock for those former journeyers who have merged with, quote, the human, parentheses, men's, and parentheses, community, end quote, but who can still feel nostalgia for the present/future of their own being. Acknowledgements. The task of writing, quote, acknowledgements becomes increasingly perplexing and ridiculous. There is no way that I can adequately name or measure the contributions of other hags, sisters, spinsters, crones to the creation of this book. In the preface to Beyond God the Father, I discuss women's oral tradition and comment, quote, my references to conversations are meant to be a reminder of that tradition, as well as an effort to set precedent for giving women some of the credit due to them, finally, end quote. This whole thing has gotten out of hand, however, for 5 years have passed since then, and there have been many more women from whom I have received encouragement and gynergy through their written communications, their conversations, their sustaining power of presence. The creation of this book has occurred in the context of a network of spinsters, hearing forth each other to new speech. It is impossible to express all my debts. Jan Raymond has generously shared her valuable class lectures and materials and given indispensable criticisms of the manuscript. Her work has been so intertwined with my own for so long that it has often been impossible to tell whose ideas are whose. Michelle Cliff has been a witty sharer of ideas as well as an excellent copy editor. Charlotte Cecil Raymond has been such an understanding, helpful, and gracious editor that I hereby unchristen her with the honorable epithet hag. Denise Connors has been a spinner of ideas woven into this book from its beginning. Conversations with her have sparked new visions, and these, together with the countless books and journals which, quote, jumped off the shelf, end quote, into her hands and onto my desk, deeply affected the course of the journey. Pat McMahon has been a truly haggard helper, contributing beyond the bounds of justice. Jenny Cushman provided assistance when it was badly needed. Helen Gray has been a staunch and supportive sister. Pat Green has been a true friend whose differing perceptions are a reminder that the women's movement is not monolithic. All right, this is wonderful, but Emily Culpepper, Janine Caputi, Peggy Holland, Eileen Barrett, Susan Lee Starr, Linda Barufaldi, Andre Collard, Fran Challard, Adrian Rich, Nell Morton, the Rockefeller Foundation Humanities Grant, and the two women at the Rockefeller Foundation, Sonia Teshu and Dr. D. Lydia Bronte, and all the four sisters whose spirits inspired me to break the barriers of silence and of sound and to keep on writing. Matilda, Jocelyn Gage, Virginia Woolf, and many whose names I do not know, many of whom were probably burned as witches. Finally, in fairness, I thank myself. Yes, girl. Okay. Don't call Mary Daly a girl. All right. Thanks for listening. That's the end of the preface. Join us next time for the introduction.